Okay, we're away. It's my pleasure to welcome Effie Chaniotis to our series of interviews where we're looking at art and chasing down the dream and digging into a bit of the psychology behind why artists do what they do and how they overcome those barriers. So, Effie, if you wouldn't mind, do you want to give us a bit of a background to your practice, the kind of art you make, where you've been, and just an overview of your practice?
Yeah, sure. So I have done two fine art degrees, and why I say that is because they were both in very different countries and had different schools of thought as well. So I studied mainly sculpture, installation, and performance art in South Australia, and did a fine art degree there, and then went on to Greece, where my parents are from and where a lot of our relatives are. And I just went for a visit and ended up living there for 8 years.
Wow.
During that time, my anchor there was that I got interested in studying art all over again at the Fine Arts School in Athens, so the Athens School of Fine Arts. And there I studied painting, sort of much more disciplined kind of school of thought and traditional skill based kind of art training as well. So I just did drawing and painting non-stop for the first 3 years, working from models, and then another 2 years of more advanced studies. And I had a scholarship that took me to Madrid as well, the Madrid School of Fine Arts. So again, still a lot of painting and drawing there, and came back to Australia, and my practice then was really, really strong. And I found that I sort of combined what I learnt from Australia and then what I learnt from Greece, and went into making imagery that was kind of really highly skilled,
Yeah.
quite beautiful. So really interested in the aesthetics of it as well, painting and sculpture. So I sort of combined the two disciplines which I had trained in from the two different schools, but found that I wanted to make work that was very meaning based, storytelling based, very narrative, interested in the narrative behind it. And and then my practice just has continued to grow
In
in
that
that
vein.
direction. Yeah, and I've been
Because
back to Australia for
I've
20
looked at
years.
your CV and your like where you've exhibited and how you've exhibited, and there's quite a lot there. You've been showing your work to people for quite a long time, and I guess the thing that really drew me to your work was that storytelling narrative. Do you find that that comes from more from the European studies or from your Australian studies, that idea of that concept based art making?
Yeah, that's a really good. Well, the concept. So I reckon I learnt in Australia. I learnt lateral thinking. So how to research an idea and the conceptual side behind it, how to be experimental in the way that I work and the way that I think, um, how to draw in lots of different things, and then almost like it helped with my creative thinking as well.
Yeah.
But the Australian mindset, at least the art school that I studied in Adelaide at the time, was one of the best art schools in Australia that had a very strong conceptual art umbrella,
Yep.
but it lacked in the belief in art. In a way, it
That's
was
the
quite.
different thing, isn't it? Europe has such a strong art culture where, everywhere you go, you can find a fantastic gallery or a museum that has this long history of art making as being valued. And that's something we're still really getting our heads around in Australia. Do you find that?
Yes, to some degree. I mean, I guess you can find the same thing here if you go looking,
Yep.
because we have a really strong tradition in art. A lot of the artists of kind of Western Australian art history would have been influenced by the European mindset, schools of thought, sort of modern art as well. But the schools in the a lot of the art schools, even in Europe, are influenced by kind of contemporary theory and conceptual art and what have you. And that doesn't always match everyone's makeup. It doesn't suit everyone.
Yeah.
Some people are poets, some people are politicians, some people are, rebellious, other people are interested in fine, beautiful, lyrical things, or everyone has a different intention. But the school of thought here in Australia in general was really influenced by a more conceptual mindset. So art history at my school, in like the South Australian School of Art, kind of started with the 20th century, really. There was a bias to it. Whereas in Greece, art history went on for like solid 3-4 years. And we started from before cave paintings and worked our way slowly. And there was this sort of reverence for the history. And we also did history of architecture as well, really, and aesthetics and philosophy. So there was a very different a different sensibility, and it was more sophisticated in a way. And people were more comfortable talking about feelings and expressions. It wasn't out of fashion. Whereas you got the idea in Australia that painting was dead. Until I left art school and started traveling, I thought, no, actually painting isn't dead. But that was the overriding kind of message. So as a sponge, you're taking all that in. If you're going in, especially straight out of high school, you're just, you're soaking it in. I was soaking in. I didn't have a lot of world experience, life experience. So I took that in. It meant that I learnt the skills that they had to offer me, but they didn't actually match my inner world. So I felt quite empty at the end of it. I felt clever. I could do lots of tricks and I could think out something and justify it and be really intellectual about it, but it lacked a substance that I needed.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit, because that's what I'm super interested in with artists. And it was something that was said to me when I was at art college, that you can paint and you can draw, but that doesn't make you an artist. And it was something that really hit me hard, going, well, what does that mean to be an artist? And this idea that you have to dig a part of yourself and your heart, your soul, your emotions, your thoughts, your experience, and let yourself be vulnerable enough to put that down into your art making. But that comes with a whole new world of obstacles, and they're mostly like personal ones. Have you struck that kind of thing where you felt like, oh, I feel like there's a barrier to me sharing? And then if you did, how would you overcome that?
So the only time I remember experiencing a barrier as a student at my first art school, where I was doing some pretty intense performances that were really autobiographical, and I realized that they were too personal for what I was able to handle.
Yeah.
So that was that came sort of left of center. So my service to the idea led me to a place that I wasn't ready to actually express. It was a bit too intense. But I tell you what, actually, Sue, I find that after studying in such different polar opposites almost, in schools of thought, I came to an appreciation that the definition of an artist is really broad. Like you always find, what is the artist's intention? So is it political? Is it to shock? Is it to serve the art world? Like, is it for their own, inner circle? Is it art for the sake of art? Is it expressionism? Is it to express art? Is it around beauty and aesthetics? Each one of those things. Is it about, exploring technology? So you're an artist / scientist, artist / psychologist, artist / craftsman, whatever it might be. Each one has its own integrity. So my sense of a definition of art gets to become a really big, long conversation, because, or it's like if you're a computer and you've opened up lots of tabs, there's lots of tabs.
Yeah.
So
There's so many ways to embrace this thing that we call creating
yeah,
and being an artist. It's not just the mark that you make on the paper, it's the bigger intention of why, it's the how, it's the where you've been, it's the experience,
that's
it's
right.
who you're showing
And
it to. There's so
not
much
all
more to
art
that
is for
story.
everyone, and not all art is for everyone. So
No.
if there's a overriding idea out there that art should be for the people, well, that's a misconception. There's art that's not for the people. You know, there's artists that make art to comment on the art world.
Yeah,
There's
right.
artists that make art because they're aiming for what is going to be really marketable.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, so I found that I just got a sense of strength in identifying, because I've been exposed to all these different forms, and I kind of could see the value of each one by positioning myself differently, and you know, understanding that there's a different intention behind each one as well. And there's art that I don't like, and that's actually quite cool.
That's
To
healthy.
know
It's
that you're
healthy
doing, yeah,
to
yeah,
but not to just not like it, but to dig into why you don't like it. And that actually leads me. It's a good segue into my next question. In have you had people like openly criticize the art that you're making? Like one of the things that this
yeah,
discussion leads to is that artists do need to develop a sense of resilience and understand that not every art opportunity is for them, not every art collector is for them, and that people may not like their art, but there's still a path. Have you ever struck that where people have just gone, hey, Effie, your art is just way off base, you need to pick another career, what are you doing? And then what is the self-talk that you've managed to keep going in a career for as long as you've been making art?
ah, um, well, I guess that kind of critique was more prevalent when you were in art school, because you're sort of learning to ask questions and get feedback from your peers and your work. You know, created a very healthy um, grounding, actually, in sharing of ideas and being inquisitive and what have you, and getting that from others. I
Yeah.
don't get it very much outside of that environment. People don't actually know how to give feedback. People are very egocentric as well. They get very defensive. But I think it's important to know, if you're asking for feedback, to know who you're asking it from and make sure that their intention is right, and that you can step back a little bit and really hear what they're saying. So if they make, you know, it's like in relationships. So if someone's going to be abrasive and you get the feeling that it's all about them, it doesn't really matter if they're speaking a truth, you're going to react. You're not
Yeah.
going to take it on board. So
Yeah.
it becomes very personal, really.
Hmm.
I developed a really healthy, I think, because I've been able to test it, you know, out in the world,
Yeah.
um, of having quite a um, robust kind of critical mind, you know, about the work. Like, I'd love to be able to nut out those sorts of things with another artist and give reflections, share reflections, and work something out with someone else. But a
Yeah.
lot of people don't have that skill. They don't understand it. They get quite guarded.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
used to thrive on that. I used to thrive on collaborative, kind of bouncing ideas off. But again, that's my style. It's not going to suit everyone else. So I
Mm.
learnt to be quite self-sustainable.
Yeah.
And because I love my work, because I love my work, I love what I do,
Yeah.
and because I know I've internalized challenging myself, asking questions, pushing boundaries within the context of what I do,
Mm.
I've had to take on that role of going, oh, what happens if you're trying this or you're repeating this? So I
Mm.
have a healthy internal dialogue, I think.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a healthy relationship with success and failure, really. It's like going the bar that you're setting for yourself, you've set that internal barometer. You've gone, this is where my level of okay is, and this is where it's not, and this is who I'll let influence that. And that's such a big thing that we, really try and encourage in artists who we find stepping into our exhibiting space, for one, is that you do have to set that internal barometer for what success is for you, because you'll have people walk in and go, oh, my 3-year-old can paint better than that. And my response to that is always, some 3-year-olds are amazing. They can paint the most incredible art. You're absolutely right. But let me give you the backstory. Let me tell you a little bit about the intention of the work. Let me tell you about why this artist does what they do, and help to build more of the bigger picture. It's not just the picture on the wall and whether that person likes it. It's that whole psychology of the why did you make the work, which I think you articulated beautifully.
And you're wanting to have that conversation with someone that wants to have that conversation with you. So even if someone, like, for me, so I've never struggled communicating about the process to others. I've always had this sort of almost like a bit of a social conscience, like I love the thought of helping people that aren't comfortable with art find a way to it. And that's partly why I was drawn to creating art. Like I love street art, mural art, public art, because of that socio-political bent to it as well, that it brings art to outside of the gallery to people and enhances their life, their environment, so that it shows a very immediate value that art has to society, just as one example.
Well, we reiterate that because we acknowledge that for people who aren't comfortable in galleries, there's like an invisible barrier to walk through the door, because on the other side there might be something that they feel like is intellectually challenging, or I won't understand it, or only nerds go into art galleries, or there's this like invisible wall that can come up between like people who don't frequent galleries and enjoy them. And like public art plays that role, and it goes, we're going to step out of our galleries and out into your space and show you that art can be super cool, which is why I was really intrigued by your work. Is when I first looked at it and I heard the narrative over the top. So it wasn't just look at my pictures and understand them. There was like, look at how my work relates to each other in a series, and then here I'm going to give you another entry point, which was your storytelling. What motivated that storytelling?
I mean, the storytelling I've been doing in a way for the last 20 odd years, but I keep developing, or finding different ways to do it, and keep developing that, exploring different ways to do that. So because like I said, that I'm interested in how I can communicate about the art to others, so I can not only speak to the people that are already really interested in that kind of conversation and already really comfortable with engaging with artwork, but the people that are on the fence, or that need encouragement, or need to be shown different ways, or educated, not in a condescending way. I'm happy to have that sort of conversation with those people through my art as well as directly. So describing I would always pay a lot of attention to the kind of descriptions I would put with my artwork. So I'm quite I've done most of my exhibitions, so I'm sort of a little bit outside of the exhibiting circle, in that I set up a lot of my own shows. I take a lot of things into my own hands. That way I've always curated my spaces to be conducive to meet people more than halfway. I don't expect people to, you know what I mean?
I do. I understand. I understand that fully, and I feel like we're on a really similar path, because I started as an artist exhibiting my work and putting it in galleries, and very, very quickly I jumped from just wanting to exhibit to wanting to curate. because I wanted to be able to build those bridges between
Yeah,
people who
yeah, yeah,
didn't feel comfortable in the gallery space, but I still wanted to have those conversations about why making art was cool and why engaging with it is
yeah,
such a fun thing when you can get more of the backstory to why it's there. It's not just a cold thing sitting on the wall that doesn't have a
yeah.
reason to talk back with you.
Well, I
And
guess
so,
what
like,
it
I
is,
fully
it's the
understand this
yeah.
idea of wanting to grab hold of that narrative and give people their first step to stand on to engage with the stories.
And it's kind of even more like democratic, because a person who doesn't need those words or doesn't want those words, who has the sensibility, the relationship, the experience of being able to stand in front of an artwork, breathe and take it in, and um, be affected by it, and doesn't even want to read the title of the work,
Yeah.
those people are not excluded anyway.
No.
It's always implicit in the work. But
Yep.
all those other people that need other little footholds or entry points are suddenly able to be considered. So um, I would say that um, a desire to have people connect with my work. I mean, to be honest, it can be a bit complicated for me to describe, because my mind again has got lots of tabs, so I'm
Yes.
thinking of a lot of different angles and dimensions of just that, of why do I use storytelling. But just as you were talking before, I just fired off like a little idea that, remember, I'm also someone who's gone through my training in a lot of multi-disciplines. So I did photography, performance, film, painting, sculpture, all these kind of things. And I see the value of all of them. So say when I'm able to now even use storytelling as a performance in the gallery space, which I can talk, I've actually started to do that together with the artwork. That's me also pursuing my passion for multidisciplinary, art. So
Yeah.
finding different, bringing together different kind of dimensions of art making or expression, and
Yeah.
composing them together in a whole. So I find that interesting. Like, it's exciting for me. I'm not just regurgitating and repeating. I'm actually developing. I'm trying new things. I'm excited by it.
Yeah.
So I'm finding always new ways that I can do it. I could easily go back to something that I did 10 years ago
Mm.
as well. Like, at each one, so I've set myself a goal of trying new ways to do it.
To do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one that you said that you first heard that drew you to me was that I've started to record my voice describing the artwork,
Mm.
the story or the process. So I'm either communicating about the creative process that led me to making the artwork,
Yeah.
or I'm narrating a myth, an actual story that
Well, that's the
adults
next
wouldn't
thing is
understand.
like the stories that you told, and particularly that story that I was engaged with, is
Vanishing Tree.
yeah, I
Yeah.
loved it, and like that first painting that I saw where it was like this delicate. There was this really strong figure with the oranges and the yellows that really jumped out of the page. And then when I looked at what he was interacting with, it was a really delicate story of nature and man together, which I really dig. And I go, that's a really spiritual concept that you're exploring, and the whole narrative that painting belongs to is quite a spiritual concept. Where is your interest in those myths and those spiritual ideas? I guess what I'm asking is that what drives your practice? Is that where the source of ideas and inspiration? Do you feel like it comes from a external source? Super curious, and I ask artists this question all the time, because when I create, I feel like it comes through me from somewhere else, and that it's a story that I'm like a conduit for. And when I saw your work, I felt a similar essence. Would you say that that's something that you resonate with?
I resonate with it, but again, it's not like I've got more tabs up.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
one of them is that, well, we're constantly. I mean, I feel that I'm also bringing in things from the past. Like, if I was to say as a child, I probably had my values already instilled in me as a child. And there were certain themes or certain principles or something there that made up the foundations of who I was to be. Then I'm drawing in, I'm remembering, and then reconfiguring, recreating
Mm,
things that I knew from a very young age. So this belief in the magic of storytelling,
mm,
you know, and understanding it later, it does so many things to your mind, to your heart. I did study art therapy, so I was like a qualified and practicing art therapist for about 5 years as a
mm.
little bit of an interim when I came back to Australia. Um, so I sort of explored that kind of feeling of wanting to be of service and helping others in inverted commas. And I think that helped me. That experience helped me clarify that I'm so as an artist. One of my intentions, is to create work that instills a belief in the power of change or transformation,
Mm.
putting positive things into the world. So if I've got 50 different intentions, 50 different things that I could choose for what my art is about and what kind of art I want to make, I made my choices, or the choices chose me. I don't know, you
Mm.
know, and that was to make art that is meaningful,
Yep.
art that will resonate with people on a heart level, like emotionally, um, art that talks about creativity and inspires perhaps creativity in others. So I'm not I'm not I'm also sharing about the creative process at the same time. So
Yeah.
I'm giving something about how it gets made so
Yeah.
that it becomes closer to people. It doesn't feel like, oh, an artist is this special person separate from us. It's like, I believe, because of my work as an art therapist,
Mm.
implicitly, that
Mm.
everyone is inherently creative.
Mm.
And I also have understood that I'm happy just to draw in and to attract the people that will resonate with my work. That is enough for me.
Yeah.
If I if it if it if it um, sparks interest in people that wouldn't have expected it, then that's a bonus as well. So by doing storytelling the way I do it through my work, the storytelling is sort of part and parcel of the artwork, but the artwork first has encompasses all my skills, all my knowledge, all my craft to create work that's going to be beautiful enough, attractive enough, and keep those very mundane words, but let's just say, because it's visual, it's
Yeah.
going to draw people in and then hold their attention long enough to engage with it, to
Yeah.
be affected by it as well.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like I've put all those pieces together to make that kind of work. There have been times when I've made work, to actually really answer your questions, Sue, about where I felt like I've channeled. And I don't use those words, like my work is inherently spiritual, but I don't use those words
Words.
to
Mm.
describe it.
Mm.
And channeling, whatever that, I mean, we can describe it probably psychologically, scientifically, use whatever language we want to.
Yeah.
Um, there have definitely been certain just artworks that I've made where I have been so freaking in the flow that
In the
I
zone,
am
right?
in the
Yeah.
zone, but so purely that I am observing it unfold. And that's a
Okay.
really awesome experience. And I
Yeah.
would say that not, every time I'm creating, there's a degree of that. Not every time it's the same. So
Yeah.
when you're making art, you're thinking,
Mm.
you're planning, you're projecting, you're
Mm.
reflecting, you're it's mechanical. then there's all the other stuff that is in flow that you can describe again. You're working with senses, you're working with peripheral vision, peripheral thought, you're working with instinct, you're working with feeling, but all those things and more are all in the one bag, and there's different proportions of all of them, and they're not always the same proportions
No,
every
no.
time you make it.
Mm.
So you can experience anxiety creating art. It's not always going to be calm and zen.
Mm.
Sometimes it's going to be that. Other times you're working hard, you're trying to make it work.
You've led perfectly to my next question, in that artists can go through these ideas of having, like you've described, this really high Zen flow-like state. And then you can fall right off it. And it feels like, why do I even own a paintbrush? I guess like that, where is all that creativity gone? You know, last week I was full of ideas and smashing out all this work. And then this week I need to sit in the mechanics.
When I was learning drawing and painting in Athens in the atelier before I got into the art school, I was told, and I believe this, inspiration is a wonderful thing, but it's actually a hindrance when you forget that inspiration comes from routine, clocking on and clocking off like a job.
So yeah, so that's what I was going to ask. Do you make art every day to keep that? And even if it's not in that flow state where you're in that, like, an inspiration just feels like it comes out of, and it hits you like a bolt, and you're creating. When you're in that low state, do you still take the time to filter ideas and go, that one had meat, that one didn't, I want to pursue this more, I want to leave that go?
Yeah, I don't actually idealize those flow states. So whilst I can tell some pretty like striking stories about the times when I've made things that were like blew me away. Yep. I don't seek those experiences. I don't put more value on those experiences than the ones where I'm sitting down and calculating an artwork.
Yeah.
So I see them all as the same thing. I don't have an ideal. I don't idealize the channeling or the flow state, because I think every time I sit down to create something, I'm accessing that element as well. But I'm not. I've never seeked it. I just do it. I'm always working. I just work it. So I've learned that you just do it. It's out of discipline that things come. So I don't ever have a fear. I never feel like I need to put my paintbrush away. I never feel I have a block. I've never had a block. You don't have
creative block.
I've never ever had a creative block, and I never will. I just work. I'm understand that the quiet times I'm still working.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it to stand out. I actually truly believe that, and I experience it constantly.
Do you know what? That's a fantastic point to make, because I push all the time that what you believe for you is true. So if you can cultivate a mindset that I don't suffer mental block, I don't suffer creative block, I'm working every day. If that's what your mindset believes, then you're right. And I fully subscribe to really taking charge of that conscious thought and going that this is how my practice works.
Yeah, I think it's definitely helpful to know that there's different, because that other kind of thought, it's valid. I know it's people's experience, but there are many other realities that are quite strong. And in the tradition of training that I got from Greece in particular,
it's tradesman-like.
It's actually understood implicitly. Well, all the people that are training in art there, look, it's been around forever. This belief that you just work through it, that it's part of the process, that inspiration doesn't come. it's not a thing of itself as a separate thing. Inspiration is the whole process. And this is not a radical concept. It's actually, I mean, it was instilled in me early on. And I only hold that belief because experience has told me that it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
So
how your practice works. Yeah.
yeah. And it's a different mindset. But I've never assumed that it was a radical mindset. I actually always just took it for granted.
Yeah.
But I know that there are many other beliefs and thoughts around art and creative expression.
So have you ever been anything other than an arts practitioner? Like, has this just been your dream, your goal, your vision, your purpose since forever?
Since the time that I mean, as soon as I finished high school and decided that I'd go into art school, you
Yeah.
know, that's all I've ever done. And then I
Yeah.
went from one course of study into another course of study, and then even when I was doing art therapy, that was like an add-on. My art muscle was so strong. I was still making every day, working full time as an art therapist, and still putting up exhibitions. So that practice was so instilled in me that it just came. Yeah. So I definitely, I've done other things, but this has always been like
You couldn't imagine your life
what
without it. Basically,
I
this
guess
is
I could, but I wouldn't. It's the thing that I do well, so I always express myself this way now. But
yeah.
I've done other things, but this has always been the main, the thing that carries all the way through. Yeah.
So if you were, I work with a lot of youth artists, and I try my best to encourage them that this creative burn that they have, it doesn't go away. Like, it doesn't, you can go like me. I joined the military and then I worked in a bank, but that creative burn always stayed. So if you were to give advice to a young person who was coming out of high school, this creative thing exists for them and it burns away. Do you have a gold nugget piece of advice that you'd give to a young person moving into a creative field?
Oh dear, I don't even know, where would I start?
Exactly. It's a big one,
What
isn't it?
kind of advice would they need from me? What would they be asking of me, do you think?
I guess one of the things that we see young people get told is that art's not a real career, that you're not going to make a living out of art, that it's go find something else to do and make art your hobby, versus going, this is something that's a real passion for these people. Art is everywhere. There's so many creative endeavors that you can get involved in beyond just painting pictures and exhibiting them.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, for someone who's lived such a big creative career, is there, like that idea that you can live in creative industries and you can make your passion your
Yeah,
purpose?
you know
And
the answer, don't you, Sue? Yeah, that's what I mean. I would sort of, out of fear that I might sound dismissive and kind of not realistic, I really wouldn't give a shit about what the stereotype about an art career being difficult. That doesn't touch me. I would
yes,
absolutely.
it's beautiful.
If you want to start looking for examples of how people have made a success, and also define what success means for you. So let's say it's monetary. Let's say that's what might be of concern at that time. I don't know, but they can find 1,000,001 examples to reinforce that it is a lucrative career.
Yeah,
They just go looking for it.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
we're always picking up on what all right, there might be some relative truth to stereotypes and kind of
The starving artist adage that
yeah.
if you move into the arts, you're always going to be hungry and you're never going to be able to pay your bills.
Well, can I just say that I've ignored those kinds of things. I've also ignored that, you know, to be an artist and a good artist, you have to have angst and you have to be suffering for your art, or you have to be extreme, you know, emotionally, you know, you live with highs and lows, or that you have you're an addictive, or that you're you know, you're on drugs or whatever it might be, whatever stereotype, you know, like oh my God, I have so much fun with absolutely ignoring all of those sorts of
Yeah.
stereotypes,
Yeah.
or that I'm not, you know, I only do stick figures, I'm not creative. I mean, immediately I can think of a trillion arguments to that. I don't believe that. I
Yeah.
believe that if you're interested in something and you put your attention on it, it's going to grow. So if you're
Right.
interested in if you're interested in cars, so when
Mm.
you're a child, every child draws.
Mm.
But if you start getting interested in numbers and you start putting your attention on numbers, of course you're going to get better with numbers, and your drawing is going to stay where you left it.
Yeah.
Pick it up where you left it 50
Yeah.
years later and start going through the development of it if you want. But it's always going to be there. You will excel in the thing that you put your attention on.
Energy into, you know, that
Well,
saying is like, where energy, what does it go? Where attention goes, energy flows, and you can start to build those things that you're super interested in.
and it makes a lot of sense. If I've devoted however many decades of study and practice to art, of course I'm going to be good at it. Now, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that to diminish my talent or my particular bent and my uniqueness.
Mm.
And I would invite everyone to say the same
Yep.
if it's important for them.
Mm.
But so definitely, I don't know, what would I be saying? By now I've probably confused them. That's my advice. But you get what I'm saying, like in
And
principle.
if I reflect back what you've just said to me, it's like, if this is something that really burns for you, if it's something that you're super interested in, and you put your effort into chasing it, you can have that career. It really is the effort that you want to put into it and the mindset that you hold around
And
it
the
that will
mindset.
dictate whether you can have a
Yeah.
career in this
So
industry.
pay attention. You can get advice from people and take in lots of different kinds of things, but pay attention to the things that you're focusing on that are strengthening or building up your desire, your vision. So find the examples of the things that are out there already that are telling you that it is possible.
Yeah.
Seek those out. Seek out positive reinforcement.
And did you
Investigate,
have that around
explore.
you as a young person? Like, did your parents support you moving into creative careers, or
Oh,
is this a steely resolve that you had to pursue this?
oh. Look, I have to really pay respect to my parents, because as a Greek child of migrants, you know, a Greek Australian, the tendency in our community, as in many families, even the you know, all communities under the Australian umbrella, would be to have a career that's going to give you security. So
Yes.
it doesn't really matter what cultural background you come from. A lot of people might be able to relate to that, but in particular in the Greek community, would have been really important to them, having been migrants who came after a, you know, famine and occupation of the Second World War, and they've come to a new country to make a better life for themselves. Of course, it makes sense that they're anxious and really interested in their children being safe
Yeah.
and free of hardship in the future. But my parents were different in that they had both pursued their own careers in Greece, and they kind of were a little bit more liberal minded. So when I said to them that I wanted to study art, I had to fight for it
Yep.
like a lawyer. I shouted my dad down with logic and rationale. And if you
Yeah.
want me to be happy, this is it. If you want me to be happy, so don't you want me to do something that's going to make me happy? And that hit like
Hit a
if he
chord.
didn't have, yeah, if he didn't have that in him to understand that,
Mm.
he would have fought me and said that I'm not going to be happy if I'm not going to be secure financially. And I
Yeah.
said, but this will really make me happy.
Yeah.
And he let me, and they gave me no resistance. So I was a little bit out of the box going into the art career. And I guess they just believed in me. They
Mm.
believed in me. And
Yeah.
anyway, it's an ongoing process. We
Yeah.
haven't, well, I'm not talking to you about my inner demons or where I had to sort of build myself up, look at some of my thinking that may have held me back. And I'd say that the main thing was that more recently, with an actual sincere desire to have my work seen by more people, that I actually want my work to be successful.
Seen.
That was a
Yeah.
personal key.
Yeah.
So successful for me was pure, honest expression, was achieving expertise, achieving freedom, creative freedom. So I have ticked all those boxes personally.
Yeah.
So, but money and success was not one of my priorities. So
No.
everything that I had put down as important, I
Mm.
achieved. And then
Yes.
now my um, interests are broadening,
Yeah.
and yeah, so
Yeah. So where does your practice sit now? Like you've been making art and you've had a long series of exhibitions and you've got this great storytelling happening. What projects are on the board for you now with sharing your work?
yeah, no, because we're sort of in a little
It is. It's an unusual time for artists, and we're
yeah,
having to like really pivot and rethink it. And you've come
yeah.
out of Melbourne where there was, all the lockdowns of happening. So has that reignited it? Have you got a new project or a new way of thinking about how you're sharing your work?
Yeah, I've got a plethora of ideas at the moment, and I'm just going through them step by step. So I've got like a few goals because I've um, all most not all but most of my exhibitions I have staged myself. So I'm sort of like a freelance independent. It would be at some point to find a gallery that is in line with me that could represent me,
Yeah.
for the sole purpose of sharing my work with a broader audience.
Yeah.
Um, I've been thinking about setting up a podcast where
Yeah.
I'm interviewing people that have had my work in their lives to tell
Yeah.
stories about, for them to tell the stories of the work for me, if
Yeah,
that
I think that
fits.
you are such a fabulous conversationalist and can articulate your work so beautifully. That would feel almost like the most natural thing to hear you
Oh,
keep
thank
talking
you.
about your work in this way. Like I really enjoy talking to you and
Oh,
you
thank
share
you.
so freely like the thought behind what you do and why you do it. And I think it's a time in the world where people really need to hear these things and like people who've um, been through the process and we're used to this traditional way of sharing art and exhibiting art and we're in this mindset now of going we have to pivot and reinvent and what does that look like and to have someone who is such a beautiful conversationalist like yourself to be able to share that in podcasts and webcasts would be like I know I'd be listening and be
Oh, cool. All right. So I'm working on that one. I want
yeah.
to do performances in the gallery space with the artwork. So imagine, which I've already done in one of my recent exhibitions. So keep developing that, where I'm scheduling performances through, say, so you walk into a gallery, the artwork is there in its own right, the placards describing whatever, but then there's a moment where I come in and I perform the story that the artworks have created. And
Yeah.
that's another thing to talk about. But so bringing actual traditional story to imagine the big tree in the park and the children sitting around a storyteller and being captivated, taken into this magical world.
Yeah.
Doing that for adults in a gallery space in the place, you know when people would describe my work as illustrative or this or that, I would sometimes go, yeah, but you're not seeing there's another dimension to this. It's actually not a, it's not just illustration. And actually, that's not a dirty word. I'm okay with that.
Oh, it's
Storytelling
so
isn't
not. It's so not a dirty
storytelling isn't
word.
contemporary enough, you know, unless storytelling isn't contemporary enough, you know, don't use the word storytelling with work.
I
I
think it's so
embrace that.
powerful in this day and age, though, where
Yeah.
we're really, like everything's shifted, and you can't walk into the gallery now and have the little story next to the picture, and to have you relaying that was just a like, oh, I was so engaged with going, this one moves to this one moves to this one, and this is how they all come together. It's
Yeah.
it's a beautiful way to
Thank you.
move people into the bigger narrative that once upon a time galleries would assist with. Like
Yeah. So I'm like,
it's
I
great.
can think of like a few other ways that I want to do it. And I want to like create some animations and sort of some theatre, sort of like multimedia kind of performances again, but using art. So
Yeah,
bringing things that would otherwise be on a wall,
yeah,
um, and bringing them and using them as props in a sort of things with music and time and lighting and yeah, all kinds of things.
yeah.
Yeah, and more and more and more. Just some of the things I want to do.
I
So
agree. And going back what you
definitely
say, like
embrace.
illustration's not a dirty word. It kind of ties into the bigger psychology around art and art making, and there can be schools of thought. And we touched on this all the way through our conversation that not every opportunity is for every artist, and not every style of art making is for every artist, and what your path is through this journey is going to be pretty, it's going to be individual to you.
Yes.
Words like commercialism, making art for commercial purposes, making art for illustration, and that, like, why do you think it is that this industry does this to itself, where we go, that's, don't go down that path, that will make your practice impure. If you create work for a commercial market, or if you create work as an illustrator, somehow you're impure as an artist.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a really good question.
it's a frustrating thing that the industry is doing to itself, and going, an artist is talented, here's an opportunity that they could really embrace. Why are we suddenly putting this shackle on them that goes, don't do that, suddenly your practice is impure? Do you have any reflections on that? Like, to me,
Yeah,
it bugs me intensely, because I go,
yeah,
why aren't we celebrating artists moving into careers that will, still
yeah.
make beautiful art but pay the bills? We don't have to be starving artists.
I guess I thought. I mean, that's always been around anyway. That in so many fields as well. There's always this um, kind of like a, you know, that. All right, we know the bumper sticker of you've sold out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this,
that
yeah,
someone might say that, or it's imaginary stuff. So imagine, and then and then she went down that way and then lost this or whatever. At the end of the day, really, your relationship to yourself is number one. How you hold, how you, how you, what you're negotiating with yourself is really what matters. So
yeah,
there's always the outer and the inner. So if you want to, I think it's important, it's helpful to develop a practice, so in yourself, so where you know that if it's important to you to do work that is um, where, because you might not have an ambition to always be developing your work. Your ambition might be to learn how to do this really well, and
mm,
then and keep producing different versions of the same thing. I don't have I don't have a judgment on that. If the
mm,
person is happy, if they're producing work that has integrity,
yeah,
um, then that's important.
mm,
If 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 I want to go and do something that's commercial, like do some art markets for a little while because I need to have some cash flow, and I come up with a little idea of how I can adapt some images into small canvases, short, think about them being, I can handle that. As in my personality
Mm.
my value can handle that. I'm going to create some quick little pieces that are beautiful little images, quirky,
Yeah.
whimsical, whatever description you want, that are going to give me some cash. I'm using my skills. I'm
Yeah.
being ingenuitive. Like, heck,
Yeah.
it's awesome,
Yeah.
and can have some cash flow when I need it. I
Yeah.
don't have any great prejudice against myself being able to. So if my creative source is this, and I can stretch it to make it do different things, that's for me to that's my business. That's my capacity.
Do you know,
But
I've never heard anyone articulate it better than what you just did just then, is going, if this is my bubble, I own
mine,
this. This is
not
mine and
yours.
I can stretch it however I want.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone articulate it better than that. Is going,
Oh,
whatever I can use out of this bubble that belongs to me, that's my business. And that's
but
there's
Sue,
a
there might be
resilience that
some.
comes from owning that.
Yeah, but let's say, but there's someone that doesn't. That works for me, and that might work for you, and for another trillion people. But there might be someone else that doesn't feel that way. In fact, for
And it's fine for
every
them.
thousand
Yeah.
words I use, someone else is only going to be comfortable using 10.
Yeah.
And so for that person, putting their only, I would only encourage someone to consider this if they're telling me in a way that they wish that they could do that,
Yeah.
but they're scared, or they're not confident, or
Yeah.
they thought that they shouldn't be doing it. If those people are telling me that, then I will encourage them to learn
Mm.
how to stretch it. But if
Mm.
someone says, I don't actually believe in that, that doesn't work for me.
Mm.
I don't want to do work that is sometimes commercial.
Yeah.
I only want to do this, and this is, this is what I feel when I do it. This is what I want to do. Then, then, then
Oh, lost you.
they have that's their
That's to them.
business, and then they'll work out how
Oh, our
to
internet's just
do
gone really
that.
slow.
So the people that are being told, don't be commercial,
Mm.
do what you're feeling that you need to do. Yeah, I can
But
tell.
I still think it articulates exactly what you
Can you
said.
hear me
Is
still?
this is
Just
my
think it
creative
has to do
bubble?
with it. It
Yeah,
has
I've
to do
lost.
with the
We've lost the
individual. It's the
video.
individual.
Yeah, so it's like whatever you want to do with your little creative bubble is your business,
That's right.
and if you want it to just be this thing, then you let it be this thing. But if you want to stretch it, then power to you. And the rest of this industry can bugger off in telling you that you somehow tainted it, because artists aren't always going to make $1,000 selling a painting every week or whatever it is that they need to fund their life. But all they want to do is be in creative industries, so they need to figure out that way to stretch what they do, whereas other people just want to focus on going, I'm going to make this great art, it's only going into regional galleries, that's my bottom line.
That's
But
right.
let's power each other up on this and go, whatever it is you want to do with your creative bubble, you stretch it, you hold it close, whatever it is, let's cheer you on, instead of
Yeah.
putting this idea on people that your creative practice has to be this one thing.
No.
It's
It's
one of
like a
my big
teacher.
bugbears.
So it's like a teacher, like we value, don't we, the teachers that work with each child where they're at.
Mm,
That each child has a particular style of learning.
mm,
Has ask a child, what do you want? They have different wants. They have a different. They have different kinds of strengths.
yeah.
So it's the same with your practice. I think, and so if I was going to talk more like a more general thing, like it's about understanding what your practice means to you, what that is. So if
Mm,
I find for myself, if I find that I'm not getting excited about what I'm making,
mm,
if I see that if I'm doing I do like lots of different streams of work. Like if I'm one, like I've said before, like a tree, I
mm,
have lots of different branches to my practice.
mm.
Everyone's tree is going to look different.
Yeah.
And I don't see that there's more value to having 10 branches to having two beautiful just two, 10 beautiful branches over two beautiful branches, because each tree is different.
Yeah.
So yeah, so if it's about just understanding what your practice is. So, and what your it's clarifying that. I think you do have to at some point ask yourself those questions and clarify that. And that doesn't have to be. It can be an easy conversation to have with yourself, or it can take some time in order to get clear about it. It doesn't really matter. Like we're all, it doesn't really matter. But I think that they are important things, whether you're aware of them or not. They're probably important things to answer for yourself. And then once you do, then you're okay with what other people's opinions, or because you start to understand why it is you're doing what you're doing, and what you're, yeah. And like I said, so for my practice, it's important that I'm not repeating the same thing all the time, to a point where then it has no joy for me. It has no energy for me. It's not dynamic. It's not working. It has no integrity for me. Then I would be checking in with myself. Okay. I need to let, I've been doing too much of that. I need to get back into the studio and do a bit of this, or do some exploration. That becomes your practice.
Yeah. Your day-to-day trade-like practice.
You're managing all those different degrees, the different, does that make sense?
It does. And what I get from talking with you is, and I'm so glad the conversation has gone the way it is, because around every idea that I've put towards you, what I keep hearing is that you have a really strong sense of self and a belief in your practice. And it's like, even when like an obstacle comes towards you, there's a filtering that takes place, that you have the ability to go, where does this sit with my personal sense of values, my personal sense of failure and success? How does it sit with my day-to-day like creation of my practice, and that worth that you give being an artist as a career path? And I also feel your ability to draw on resilience, and your ability to have grit in this career, which is something that, like I kind of scream from the rooftops, is going that you can have so many obstacles come at you when you choose a creative career, whether it's the critic who tells you that your work is crap, whether it's a gallery who doesn't want to take you on, whatever level it is that you find your obstacle in this career. What you're really going to need to draw on, if you want to do it as your path and your purpose, is that understanding of who you are, why you're doing it, and where you want it to go. And in doing one more question around that idea, do you do goal setting around your practice? So do you, review where you've been and then set goals for where you're headed?
And probably not like on a whiteboard and structured.
Yeah.
I'd say that I'm probably thinking of doing a little bit more of that, but it's always happening anyway.
Because I notice when you're visual, you're looking up, and like I see that you see like visual people look up, and I'm like, so is your whiteboard here in front of you? Yeah.
I think degrees of that's probably going to be helpful for me, especially as I'm getting more like willing to embrace more.
Yeah.
Like to create even more. And like because like I said before, I've been so content, and I have a loving relationship to my work, a good relationship to my art, that's sustainable.
Yeah.
So I could be in a cave creating art. It wouldn't mean that others have to see it. I have that kind of, I'm exaggerating, but that I've got that kind of relationship to the creating. The wanting others to see it now, really wanting others to see it, not just whoever, but wanting to make it visible for more people,
Yeah.
has linked essentially with my deepest values, that I'm allowing myself to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
Because
does.
it's
It does.
matching with my deepest values, I'm not resisting that anymore.
Yeah.
And because I'm not resisting that anymore, aside from my ability to create, to generate, to create things, I'm now, I know there's another level, I'm now generating and creating goals, as you put it, for how
Yeah.
to get it out there.
Yeah.
Whereas here I was full and happy. I'm happy. It's saying pig in mud. I'm really happy here. No problem. I
Yeah.
can talk about this for hours.
Yeah.
Now I've just added this extra level. It's always been there in different ways, but now because I'm even more in line with it.
Yeah.
So goal setting in that respect, I don't normally use those words, but I've got them. Like when you ask me, what do I see coming next? I'm saying the
Yeah.
podcast and this and that.
Mm.
I'm being uh, I'm allowing myself the freedom to envision these things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're underneath in my little world. Now I'm ready to open it up.
Open it up. I
With
do because I'm a prescriber, and it's something that I ask artists when I'm looking to work with them. I go, what's the big picture? How big are we dreaming here? Where do you see
right.
yourself? And
Yeah,
finding
yeah,
out
yeah.
whether, like, if their biggest goal in the world is just to go, well, I've made it to Lewis Gallery, I'm on the wall, that's great, I can make that happen. But like, where do you see yourself? What is the story that you run in your head for where you see your art go? And for some people, it is just literally, I just want to paint and I don't care if anybody sees it. But when you get to
Yeah.
that point where you go, I want to create stories and I want people to interact with them, because I don't know what it is that wakes that up in an artist, but it wakes up and it goes, I really want people to have a dialogue with me about my art. And when you get that feeling clear, sometimes, and I don't know if it happened with you, but there's a wrestling with ego that happens, that goes, why do I feel like people need to see what I do? There's a wrestling with ego about sharing the work. And then
Ah,
there's,
you know what's helpful for me, Sue? What's helpful for me is that I think of my art as having its own identity, its own intelligence, its own spirit, it's a lot, and I want it to, I, I want to treat it with love and respect and celebrate it. And I
has
want
its own
my
life, its own
artworks,
energy, its own
yeah,
journey.
it's so beautiful. I
Yeah.
want my artworks to enjoy life. I want them to go out into the world and make friends. I want them to fall in love. I want people to fall in love with them. The people that are meant to fall in love with them, to fall in love with them. And I want my art to fall in love with other people. And I mean that with immense sincerity. And
I
that's
get it.
powerful.
I get it. And sometimes you'll stand in front of a piece of work. And this is why I still love physical gallery spaces versus just the online thing. Is sometimes you can stand in front of a work and literally the energy of that artist hits you in the heart. You're like, whoever painted this just dropped their soul into it. And it's like, like I fully prescribe to everything in the universe is just energy. And the energy that you put into
Yeah.
something is the energy that's going to come back at you. And sometimes you'll just stand in front of something and it'll just sing at your heart and you go, I'm in love
And
with this piece of work
people are
because
falling in love with people are falling in love with me and with my artwork, but they're falling in love with themselves. And that's a conduit. That's just like a little,
it is.
like those beautiful stories of the magic, where they open up the cupboard and they enter into this magic world.
Well, yeah.
That's the kind of work I'm wanting to create. That's the kind of work that I'm creating, so that it has that, and I'm imbuing with that. I recognize its potential to have that,
Yeah.
and I recognize everyone's potential to have that if they
Yeah.
want to as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that's beautiful, and your art definitely. When I first saw it, how many times do we mindlessly scroll? And I just stopped and I went, Wow, this piece of art's really singing to me, and I just felt compelled to reach out and have a conversation to you about it. Um, we've been chatting for nearly like an hour and a half, which is fantastic, and you know, I've really enjoyed having this conversation, and for you taking the time to share your practice with us. Um, all the best. I hope things settle down in Victoria for you soon and you can get back to your studio and continue making this beautiful art and sharing these stories. And power to you, Effie. You're amazing.